I'm a writer, a broadcaster, a journalist, and sometimes I'm an academic. And for the last 20 years, I've been writing about the politics and sociology of sport in general and football in particular. And in the last year, I published a pamphlet called Playing Against the Clock, Climate Change and Global Sport. So sport is played to a great extent outside, and there's a lot of weather outside. And as the weather and as climate changes around this world, all of those practices are going to be really profoundly shifted. I mean, just think about temperature rise around the world and its impact on winter sports. There isn't going to be a winter sports industry in 80 years on current trends. We know that by 2050, half of previous Winter Olympic hosts will no longer be able to host an Olympics because there won't be enough snow and there won't be enough ice. Temperature rises around the world are going to make playing outdoors, all sports, really, really problematic. And how is sport responsible for that? You know, on the back of an envelope, you could say the global sports industry is about 0.8% of global GDP. It's probably less carbon intensive than making concrete, but it's probably more carbon intensive than, you know, organic agriculture. And why is that? Because about 70% of what the sports industry generates in terms of carbon is transport of you and me and everybody else going to watch and to participate. So that is, you know, 0.8% of global GDP is probably about 0.8% of global carbon emissions. And we're not even talking about the sportswear industry here. So 0.8%, it may not sound like a lot, but, you know, that's Spain or Poland. And nobody at COP26 is saying, oh, Spain and Poland, you get a free pass. So the sports industry has a really serious set of risks to face, and it has a serious responsibility in terms of its carbon emissions to do something about it. So at an official level, there's something called the UN Sports for Climate Action Framework, which is a set of agreements established by the UN climate people and the leading global sports agencies 2 years ago. FIFA and the IOC were probably in the lead of that. And they've asked all of the national and global federations of sport, the sports manufacturers, the broadcasters, the professional clubs of all kinds, as well as grassroots organizations to sign up. And it commits people to going carbon zero for 2050 and for using the power of sport to influence athletes, fans, sponsors, broadcasters, etc. And it will be part of the COP26 process. So there is the basis of collective action. Of course, the you know, saying 2050 is no good, and so far the commitments only apply to self-generated carbon, but not what they call, I think, Schedule 3 in the unspeakable bureaucracy of the UN, which is the transport stuff, right? Not directly generated by Tottenham Hotspurs, but if Tottenham Hotspurs are playing, a lot of people getting in their cars to go and see them. So you've got to include that in it. And the whole thing needs to be, you know, much tougher. I mean, for example, no, everybody's still accepting fossil fuel sponsorship, you know, Gazprom sponsor FIFA, etc. So there are limits and problems to it, but nonetheless, it's a really, really, really important space. And everybody needs to be signing up to it. Like right now, after this interview, in the realm of sport, I mean, if you support a club of any kind or a franchise of any kind, go and look what their policy on this is. And if they're not part of the UN Sport for Climate Action Framework, email their CEO.